without it.
Yes.
If you can, not to use it, but if you can't, or you're behind in the corners, that's good. Now, I'd like just to tell a story about Biddy Early. Somebody asked me there about her. She was, of course, the best and the greatest healing woman of the 19th century. And once again, like in the previous story there, she had to handle all kinds of people, not just people who came to her with ailments of body and mind, but people came to her too with problems of the fairies, the fairy world. Now, lots of people today will say, but that was an age of superstition, the 19th century. Maybe it was, but you see, Biddy had the problem of people who might be superstitious, and how would she handle those? Because there's no doubt about it, she did handle people who were confused in their minds and put them right. Now, you can go today to see her little piece of ground where her cottage was. And I'm always surprised when I go to Fecal, and it's a very sad thing to notice that the people of Fecal have never put up any kind of monument to her. The most famous Clare woman of them all. A woman who is known not just in Clare but all over Ireland and beyond. And never acknowledged in her own place, in Clare, in Fecal. They don't know even where she's buried in the old graveyard in Fecal. Johnny Patterson, the famous clown, they have dug out the ruins of his cottage and honoured him. Brian Merriman, he's buried in the same graveyard as Biddy Early, the old graveyard, and there's a plaque to him on the wall. Why not put one to Biddy Early, even though her grave mightn't be exactly known? We know roughly where it was, because an old man told me that he knew where it was in 1929, but we know roughly where her grave was, and still, nothing. I can't ever understand that. They seem to be ashamed of her there. No need of that, because there's no doubt she was a good woman, and she killed thousands. I was down there with some people recently, and the little boreen up to her house is completely overgrown now, but at the bottom of the boreen, at the side of the road, is the little pool of water. It's a spring, obviously, where she used to get the little bottles that she used to give people to take away with them. Now, what was in the bottles, of course, was just water. And she'd give you the instructions on how to use it. And there it is, completely grown in with bushes. Why, I tell you, if that was in Kerry, if that was in Kerry, I guarantee you they'd be making millions. Wrongly, because Biddy never made money out of her cures, as people aren't supposed to do if they're real healing women or men. But still, it should be minded in Kerry. In Clare, you see, the problem in Clare is, and I always maintain that in Clare they have no value on the things they have. And they don't. They don't, sadly. I always said that if the Cliffs of Moher weren't in Clare, they'd be making value out of them somewhere else, if they weren't natural. But there was this man in Kilkishen. His name was Gashty Mac. And I suppose Gashty stands for Augustine. His name was Gashty Mac. He was married, and they were living in a thatched house like everybody else that time. And Gashty got sick. And he was inside in the bed for maybe 10 days, and he wasn't improving. And his poor wife, so she was trying to mind him as best she could. They were poor people, and for poor people at that time, there's no doctor, except the neighbouring women were doing what they could for her as well. But while he was sick, there was this flock of birds above on the roof, like magpies, black and white birds, and they're pecking and picking and pecking and picking the straw out of the roof, the ribs of thatch. Now, Mrs. Mac didn't notice that at all. She was too busy with her husband inside in the bed and he in a fever. But eventually, one of the neighbouring women said, go to Biddy early. She might be able to help him. And we'll mind your husband. So she did. She borrowed a neighbour's horse and car and over she went to Fakel. And, of course, there was a queue there. There was always a queue at Biddy's house. She took her place in the queue. And eventually she arrived at the half door. And when she did, Biddy knew her. The woman from Kilkishen. So began, of course, Mrs. Mac, frightened, startled. But that's the thing that used to frighten people when they'd arrive at Biddy's door. She'd know you immediately. She'd know where you came from. She'd know what was wrong. Look, if you came from Dublin, arrived at Fakel, and she'd know you, I tell you, you would be frightened. Mm-hmm. But in any case, she knew her, invited her in, sat her down, and gave her the tea. Biddy was a fierce, generous woman always. And tell me, and of course she knew that was only putting Mrs. Mac at her ease. And Mrs. Mac, of course, told her about her husband being sick at home, and she said, Mrs. Mac, I have bad news for you, she said. And Mrs. Mac, she looked at her and she said, Mrs. Mac, she said, since you came here to me, your husband is dead. And of course, Mrs. Mac, oh Lord Christ, what? Shh. No, she said, Biddy said to her, he might be dead, but he isn't dead. Of course, poor Mrs. Mac, she was, what's she talking about? Now she had enough in her mind with the husband sick at home for the last 10 days without listening to this kind of thing. He's dead and he isn't dead. And Biddy said to her, you saw them birds above on the roof picking the thatch, didn't you, for the time your husband is inside in the bed? And Mrs. Mac had to admit that she didn't because, look, she was too busy inside in the house. Well, says Biddy, you might have thought that they were magpies, but they're not. They're the fairies, they're the good people, and 'tis the good people now that are taking your husband. And if you want to save your husband from them, listen now, and I'll tell you what you have to do. Go home and order the stuff for the funeral. Coffin, tobacco, snuff, pipes, everything that you need for the funeral. But, she said, get 4 black-handled knives. And when it comes time for putting the thing in the bed, now remember, it looks like your husband, but it isn't your husband. That's a changeling, a Mollerthorn. But when it comes time for putting that thing into the coffin, put the 4 black-handled knives in first, with the handles out to the corners of the coffin and the points of the knives into the middle. 4 corners, and then put it in. Put the thing in the bed, in on top of them, and screw down the coffin, top, the lid. And make sure you have the 4 strongest men in the parish there, and let them bring out that coffin and take it to the church. And you know yourself, there's a crossroads between the church and your house. Now, when they're carrying that coffin on their shoulders from the house to the church, make sure that no one of your family touches that coffin, especially you. Nobody else of the family touches that coffin. And Mrs. Mac was listening to all of this, wondering. And finally, Biddy said, go on, she said, do what I tell you, and you'll save your husband from them. And Mrs. Mac got up on the door, and she put her hand in her, wherever she had her bits and pieces of pennies. And Biddy says, no, just go and do what I told you. And off went Mrs. Mac. And by the time she got home, of course, all the neighbours were there, and sympathised with her, sorry for your trouble and sorry for your trouble. And Mrs. Mac, she just, what, and she did what Biddy told her. She ordered the coffin, she ordered the stuff for the wake, pipes, snuff, tobacco, drink, and the rest of it. And no, she had only one black-handled knife herself. But of course the neighbouring women, they would have the rest of them. And she collected 3 other black-handled knives. And of course people thought that was maybe a little bit strange. But look, they knew she had been at Biddy, so nobody took any great notice. And that evening, when it came time for gathering in, the bed was made inside, and the man in the room above, as I said, that's where they hold wakes too, as well as the stations, and your man was laid out in the bed. More people came and they were sorry for her trouble, and the people, the neighbours and all the rest. And the night went off, she had plenty of company, but the following day, when it came time for carrying him to the church and for coffining him, Mrs. Mac said, before you do anything, she said, and she got the knives. And she put them in just as Biddy had told her, and people wondering now, what is she doing? But it was her house, it was her funeral, and she put the knives into the coffin, black handles to the corners, points to the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now she said, you can put him in, which they did, and they closed the coffin. And the 4 strong men were there, and they brought it out. The coffin had been there in the kitchen all the time, standing up, and they brought it out, carefully. And then when they got it out in the yard, up on their shoulders, and headed for the church. The only place you'll see that done nowadays is when you see somebody being brought to the church after a game or something like that, you know, when football or a hurling star or whatever, people giving him a guard of honour. But they carried him. And it wasn't that much of a distance. The crossroad was only 500 yards away. But as they came closer to the crossroads, with every step they were taking, the weight in the coffin was getting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier. Now there were strong men, the 4 strongest men in the parish, but they were almost at the crossroads when they could go no further. With the weight, it was like there'd be a half a ton inside in it, and their knees began to give under them, and the coffin started to slip off of their shoulders. What in the name of God was in it? And it started to slide off of their shoulders. Now Mrs. Mac was directly behind it. She was the chief mourner after all. And what would she do? Of course, by pure instinct, she up with her hands to try to stop it. And the minute her fingers touched it, it rose up as light as a cork, and those 4 men were able to walk straight on with it until they came to the crossroads. And when they did, Mrs. Mac said, put it down, and they put it down, that coffin, fair in the centre of the crossroads. And one of the men there, he unscrewed the top of it to know what in God's name was this. And when he pushed aside the cover, what was in it? Only ghastly Mac. And Mrs. Mac, she rushed home, and when she ran into the kitchen, there was the brush. And Biddy told her that if she does nothing, keep her hands off of the coffin, it should be the other way around. The brush would be inside in the coffin, and when she go home, there would be her husband inside by his own fireside. But because she didn't obey Biddy's orders, and this time he was gone.
No.
They had him. The fairies carried him. So we only got one chance with Biddy if we didn't obey her orders. And poor old Mrs. Mac, I won't say that she had only a bunch of straw for the rest of her life, but she didn't obey Biddy's orders, and if she had, it would be the other way around. There'd be a bundle of straw inside in the coffin, and when she go home, then would be her husband alive.
Private.
Sadly. Now, Biddy was a remarkable woman. She was, and one more. Can I tell one more?
Of course.
When I was doing the book on the West Clare Railway, which unfortunately I don't have with me oh, I do, yes. I met many, many interesting people on that 58-mile walk. The great thing about walking is you meet people. You meet nothing in cars. You're just gone with a car and you meet nobody. By walking, you meet people and you can talk. You meet a lot of people and they won't talk to you. And I always say when people don't talk to you, have a problem. Walk a bit further and you'll always find somebody who will talk to you. That's the great thing about talk. That's what we have mouths for. And I met some wonderful people when I was walking the West Clare Railway with Keith. My son, he was only 14 at the time, now he's 42, and he says it was the best thing he ever did to walk that railway line, and he remembers it to this very day. But when we were in Ennistimon, I remember a man told me a very interesting story, and by God there was plenty other stories as well. He told me a story about rats. Now, you probably know, rats can be sent to you. Believe it or not, rats can be sent to you. This is a belief that was all over Ireland. Rats can be sent. We all know, of course, rats, they're everywhere. The belief is, and seemingly scientifically, a rat is no more than 6 feet from any of us at any time. There are way more rats in the world than people because they breed so quickly, and you can never kill enough rats because they breed so quickly. But rats, it was believed, could be sent to you. Some people, especially poets, had the power to send rats. And there are plenty stories of people who, if you displeased them, could send the rats to you. And if they send the rats to you, you were in trouble, as you might expect. Now, I knew a man in Ennistimon when we were walking the line. And Ennistimon, for anybody who knows the town, is quaint kind of a town. And it was a very, very busy town in its day when the railway and all went through it. Now it's famous for 2 bloody houses that hold up all the traffic. At that cursed corner going out to Lenihan. And they won't demolish the goddamn houses because they say, oh, they're quaint and they're what do they call them nowadays? These kind of houses, they're heritage. But they're no more heritage. They're all 2 old goddamn ruins, and they cause half a mile hold-ups of traffic. And as one man said to me, somebody should come in the night with a JCB. And oh, Jesus, I bumped into them by mistake, and God Almighty knocked them into the river. I don't know, is that true or not? Should that be done or not? But they are going to have to build a ring road now around the town in order to preserve these 2 houses. They stand for nothing really. They're just. But it's a quaint town. It is a quaint town, and there's lots of lovely, lovely shop fronts in the place. It was obviously a lovely town in its day, and lovely old names like Unglert's Bakery, Unglert, obviously a very German name. Nice town, and the Falls Hotel, which was the big house of the McNamara's, and the falls and all in that river, lovely place. But this man, he owned a pub one time, and it was a great town for fair days, cattle fairs, horse fairs, sheep fairs and that. And he told me that on a cattle fair day, the cattle used to be right up as far as the Protestant church in the fair. And at that time he said, you see, and it's the same all over Ireland, on a fair day, with the cattle, you see, you had to protect your windows in pubs, in shops and everything else. And they used to put up slats of timber. Now, not enough to jack in the shop, but just a slat of timber here and here and here, you know, in order to protect the glass, in case one of the cattle kicked back and send your window flying around the house. Now, this man owned a pub, and he said that on one occasion, before a fair, he said there was his usual crowd were in, and he found it had to get rid of them. Now, the cattle fair would be only once a month, but you see, he had his regulars, and it's how do you put your regulars out? Because they're your bread and butter. And he had to be up at 5 o'clock in the morning to put those slats up in order to prepare for the fair, because the fair would be starting at 7. And his wife would always tell him, come on, those slats of timber would be ready in the hall to put them out, up on the little iron rings on the what do they call the sills outside. And he wouldn't. He told me my wife was the kind of woman that I wouldn't dare to contradict. She was that kind of woman. I suppose, you know, she was a businesswoman. So anyway, he was waiting for the crowd to go, and they didn't go. And 1 o'clock came, and 2 o'clock came, and then I'm Jesus, why did he go? He was thinking, not saying. But finally, it was about 3 o'clock before the last one went, and he went to bed. And his wife rooted him out of it about 5. Now, he had only time to be getting himself ready and putting up those timber slats. They were in the hallway, and now he was getting ready to do that. Came downstairs in his nightshirt, of course, there was no pyjamas in those days, and he opened the door. Now, it was one of those, not a door like this, now open in the middle, 2 doors, open in or open out. And he opened it in, and he had this pitter-patter, coming down along the flags, the footpath. And he said to himself, in the name of God Almighty, he says, isn't there somebody very early in? And he peeped out, and what did he see coming down along the footpath? Only this squad of rats. And what was leading him? Only this big rat, the size of a terrier dog, and this card around his neck. So immediately, of course, he pushed out the door and rushed up the stairs and looked out the window above. And sure enough, the rats passed out. And thank God, he says, they passed out my door. But he got a good look at the big rat. He said he was a monster. And there was big chunks stuck out of him, and there was chunks stuck out of his tail. Right, he said he was a lad that was in many and many a battle. But they passed on. And he says, I don't know who they're going to, but I wouldn't like to be the place they're going to. But he waited for maybe a half an hour, and he addressed himself. And then he opened the door quietly, a couple of inches, and they were gone. So out he went and did the business that he was supposed to do, put up the slats in the window, and he had a bite to eat. His wife came down then, and she queried what she quizzed him, and he told her, and she didn't believe him for a while. But after a while he convinced her, and the fair took place. He didn't hear who they had gone to, but after a while, a few days later, he heard the news from a different part of the parish that a man had come to town, a man he knew, because a publican would, in a town that size, would know everybody. A farmer had come to town with news of rats, and the rats, he said, had been sent to him. And of course he was there. How do you know they were sent to you? Well, he said, I knew, and the reason was, he said, that he said, they came They came, and I saw them coming at a distance, and luckily for me, he said, pure luck, he said, there was a man close by, and he had a charm against them. Now, if it was in another part of the parish, he said, I was finished. Because if the rats come to you, what can you do? If you are a shopkeeper, they'll come, and they'll come in, and they'll piss above on your shelves. And who's going to buy anything off you? But the smell of rats piss off of it. And if you're a farmer, and they'll come up in your hay, and what cattle are going to eat your hay after a smell of rats piss off of it? You're gone, you're gone. But he saw them coming, and you ran to your man, who was only a couple of houses away. It was pure luck. And your man had a charm. And I suppose he knew what to do. And he came out, he saw them coming in the distance, and he saw the big rat. And again with the little thing around his neck, and he said, pull in here. And they pulled into two bushes while your man ran to his house. And he came back with a razor. Now, not the razors we'd use today, the tea razors, but one of the cutthroats, one of the old cutthroat razors. And he said, stay. And he put it down in the ground. He seemed to know which way they'd be coming. He put it down in the ground, sharp side up, opened, and now he said, put in here. And the two of them crouched down inside in the bushes, and as the rats came closer and closer, the man with the charm stood out in front of him, and he started reciting something that the farmer didn't understand. He didn't know, was it Latin or Greek or Irish or what? And the rat stopped, and he recited it louder and louder, and they started backing away. Now, the way your man put it to me was, "Have you a dog?" he said. I said, "I have two of them." Well, he said, "Were you ever walking your dogs, and your dogs didn't want to come with you?" I said, "Many a time I had to pull them away from something." But he said, that's the way they were. As he recited louder and louder, they backed and backed and backed away, but they couldn't. They had to come forward, whatever he was saying. And the big rat, as soon as he came as far as the razor, the man who had the charm, now he changed what he was saying, and the big rat, he put down the neck on the razor, and he started rubbing his neck across the razor until it started bleeding. And as soon as it did, the rats let a screech out of them and scattered to the four directions. And of course, the big rat eventually down, and with the last few twitches, died, of course. Now, said the man with the charm, now he said to the farmer, pick up the bit of paper. And of course your man didn't want to. With rat's blood in it. Pick it up, he said. And your man did. No, very carefully, of course, naturally. And he says, open it, which he did, opened it again very carefully. And now he said, tell me what's written in it. And what was written in it? Only his own name and address. His own name and address. Whoever had sent the rats obviously knew him. So, was it a neighbour? Or who? He never found out who. But it was obviously it was no stranger anywhere who did it.
Yeah.
So, bad-minded, kind of pishogues. But it seemed to prove that some people can do it. And only that the man there had a charm against them. God only knows where they were going and what they would have done to him. So, can be done. Can be done.
And would it be true then that only those who know the way of the world and the way things happen would be sensible enough not to be using a razor for trimming their beard, who would keep it so that they'd have it in case the rats came, even though it meant that they had a Methuselah beard.
But you know something now when you say that? My son, not this fellow now, was out in Malaysia and he was working in a barber shop where you know the open blade razors, kind of, you know, Turkish barbers as they call them. And I was given one of those shaves one time, and I never felt more uncomfortable in my life. You know, because you're all the time wondering, depending on the fellow who's giving you one of those shaves, if he chooses to cut my throat, or if he has a slip of the hand, or if he starts thinking about something else. It was the only time I ever had one of those open razor shaves, and I never would again. You know, it made me most uncomfortable, I guarantee you, no chance. No way. Maybe that's the reason I left to grow up. I didn't like it. Any questions? No charge for questions.
Is there any connection between from your second story, from the King of the Cats and the Cave of the Cats?
And
the Cave of the Cats.
Oh, there's Keshquerin, is it? Yes, Keshquerin is up in County Roscommon. And there was always the notion that that cave was the cave to the underworld. No, I don't think so.
No?
I don't think there's any connection. Because there's another story, I would have told it tonight if I had the time. It's a very funny story, the cat and the dog. Comparing the cat and the dog, and how the cat is much more intelligent than the dog. It's a funny story, it's a good story, like children love it. But it's a truly Irish folk story. It would make a great story for a book of animal stories, Irish animal stories, maybe which I will do in due course if I get a chance. But look, I'm 75, so I can't flash it. By the way, Gil have accepted my military memories finally, so I've been 5.5 years at that one. The black and tans section of it. The other one, then I hope they'll accept the First World War, and then the third volume would be the Civil War. That height of material of people who were involved themselves, you know, because that stuff that can never be got again because they're all dead. And I recorded them while some of them were still alive. I even recorded a man who was alive during the Boer War. You remember the Boer War personally? Well, yeah, he was born in 1890.
Yeah.
He was born in 1890, so those kind of people are long, long gone. Indeed.
Do you ever hear any stories about people encountering the Tuatha De Danú, as in Lugh and the Dagda and all that, the fairies who might be thought of as the Irish gods?
No, very few. Very, very few. The nearest I can come to it is my son in Germany, the man there who did that book, Evangelizing Ireland. He called one of his sons Lou, and I said, "Oh, you don't, please do that." In Germany, what would they make of a name called L-U-G-H? What will they call him? Lug or Log? L-U-G-H. In Germany, what will they pronounce L-U-G-H as? I said, they won't know in the name of God what to make of it. But he went ahead anyway. I said to him, you're making a mistake there. However, no, and that is true. I heard very few even from McCool stories. Local legends, yes. The only Finn McCool stories I heard were back in West Clare from one old man. He'd be Junior Crehan, the famous fiddler. He told a few Finn McCool stories right enough, but otherwise they were gone. They were gone. Ghost stories, banshee stories, fairy stories, yes. Local stories of people who interfered with forts, plenty of those, but all others. I'm not
Michael
surprised.
Collins, did you ever hear?
Huh?
Did anyone give you any indication of who shot Michael Collins?
Yes. Plenty. I what do you call him? The plenty people who said and were convinced it was Emmett Dalton.
Really?
Oh yeah. But look, I mean, you can never. Will it ever be known? Will it ever be fully known? I'm not sure it will. What I do there, you see, is like the Black Book, meeting the other crowd. I give them all their say in their own words and let the reader make up their own mind. And that's all you can do. That is all you can do. Because many of the readers anyway have made their minds up before this. And there are so many books on that period that, I heard recently from somebody in the folklore department in UCD, and by the way, I'm so sorry that down the years nobody in UCD folklore department has ever got in touch with me, which I find mysterious. Never. After 50 years of collecting, nobody in...
Apparently quite typical.
Well, I find it strange.
You hear things.
I find it very strange. But I had read in the radio recently that they are so sorry that they never got much on the Civil War. They seem not to have collected much at all. I have an amazing amount on the Civil War, even among people who took part in it. So, I mean, what's the big deal?
Big deal is quite simply when people say, we never learned about that in school.
Oh, yes.
God, yeah.
And the teacher had to go into a classroom, let's say in Clare or Knocknagoshel or wherever, and teach a class of kids, knowing that that fella's father was on one side and the other fella's father was on the other side. And people, after it was over, had to make do and get together and come along, and they could have their politics on a Tuesday or a Sunday or whatever, but for the rest of the week they had to get on with their lives.
I know. Yeah.
And to come and teach that to a class of kids, whatever version the teacher wanted to teach, would have destroyed a whole parish. And that's why it wasn't done. And if it wasn't, we might regret that the stories weren't collected.
Yeah.
But for the people who lived through it, I find it hard to find fault with.
Right, yes, it's a pity, but even now, it's a hard thing to do because I'm from Kerry, as I say, Knocknagoshel, and Brosna, the one parish, but the mine that was exploded in Knocknagoshel that killed 6 Free State soldiers, that caused the Ballycd thing then, and caused the Countess Bridge killings, and that caused the Bahocks killings in Cahasiveen. It was a bad
And you can take the link down to the Kerry babies, and you were still Stephen Fuller's family.
Well, that,
You know,
somebody
it's
said to
all-
me, well, only for the GAA, it would have been 10 times worse. The GAA said that. Brought them together. And to this very day, that's probably why Kerry was such a good county for football. Much more so than the population ever wanted. Because Dublin should have been winning everything considering the population. And it's, you see, I don't say it now because I'm from Kerry, because I never gave a damn one way or another. My whole thing was, may the best county win. And when it came up to I'm not much interested in sport anyway, but I'd love to see Mayo winning. I'd love to see Waterford winning in hurling. You know, counties that don't get much credit for good teams, but you'd always think that politics, it's inevitable. Politics shouldn't really enter into sport, but they do, and there's nothing you can do about it. And these things, they go hand in hand, and anybody who thinks they shouldn't is only a fool. They do. Anybody, look, human nature is human nature. I remember for Pishogues, I found on May Eve a bag of sticks, hazel sticks, 3 sticks, hazel, pointed on both ends. And when I brought them home, Mary wouldn't let him into the house. I had to take him down to the church shed and hang him up in the rafters of the church shed. Because Mary, my wife, was reared on a farm, and she knew the significance of these things, the Pishogues. So I still wanted to show them to young lads when I'd be visiting schools, because it's all very fine to be talking about things, but it's lovely to have some artifact to show them, to pass around. But you wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable about these things myself, because they're bad-minded. Pishogues are a bad-minded thing. So there was a priest inside in the friary in Ennis I heard was good with these things. And I took him into him. And I said, will you bless that? And he did. He did. Oh, why wouldn't he? That's his job. He was very good. And I thanked him. I made an offering there for you like you'd offer for a mass or whatever. And he said to me, and it was a very interesting statement he made. And he said, look, he said, if you think that these things are gone away, you'll be very mistaken. Because most people nowadays, we're all sophisticated now. We all have our beep boxes and everybody thing, beep, 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 beep. But people are people behind it all. And he said that, look, he said, it's like this, that people are made up of the same percentage of good and bad, and that'll never change. Be it good or bad, people are always more or less the same. And I believe him. Look at the world today. Look at the killing. Look at the wars. Look all around you. Has anything really changed? No. He was right. He was right. You wouldn't believe the phone calls I get all the time. People, I don't know how they know, but I'm no psychologist, I'm no psychiatrist. But I do get them. I suppose just in the fairies books and all the rest of it. People, I tell you, people ring me and you listen. I don't charge anything, but I do get them. And some of the stories you hear that frighten you. I tell them what I can, just from my own experience. I've gone around and I tell them what I can. I got a story last week and Jesus Christ, it worried me. And all I could do was reassure the poor man. And I could tell from his accent that he was up North Midlands. And I said to the poor man, I said, look, try your best not to. There was a sequence of events that he thought were connected. And I said, look, don't. That's. He thought his family had something against. It was all legal. And I could see that as far as I could see anything. And I said, look, don't put it down to that at all. Put your mind at ease. But people get terribly worked up about things. And maybe we all would. And all you can do is try to reassure people. But no, we live in a... People always did. Simple as that. People always did. But people are under terrible pressure now. A lot of people are under terrible pressure. And maybe that's the reason so many suicides and God only knows what. We all see things on television, people doing awful things, but we shouldn't judge, maybe. You know, the old statement, judge not and you shall not be judged. It goes a long way, maybe. So, I don't know anything no more than anybody else. But, Biddy, they think was right. You know, Biddy, she never charged either for anything. She just did her best, and that's why she's remembered today. She died on the 23rd of April 1874, and thanks be to God, I was able to find her death cert for the latest edition of the book. I was able to find her death cert and the death cert of one of her 4 husbands. So that'll put an end to all the speculation that she didn't exist and she was only a legend. She is 23rd of April 1874. A wonderful woman. One of the most.
One of her husbands? Did you say one of her husbands?
One of them.
Did she have several husbands?
4. She was afraid of nothing. That was a tough age to have 4 husbands in. But she wasn't afraid of the police or the clergy or anything. And she lived to be 76, which was a big age in the late 19th century. No, she was a special woman. She was indeed. So, all I can say is, on a bad night with the toy show and all, that special show, thank you for coming out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.